You know, Telnet that we looked at in the last video was pretty cool. You can control other devices using it. But there was one problem. The passwords and then the commands went across that network in plain text, so it's not very secure. Well, SSH, or Secure Shell, was a replacement for Telnet that was more secure. As you can see, if I type SSH here into my command line, I get a whole bunch of stuff that asks me about binding address, log files, identity files, login names, and so on. All this stuff to give it security. And so that's what SSH is used for, in order to provide security in that Telnet session. Again, we have an SSH here using PUTTY. We have an SSH option. Telnet was one option. SSH is another option that I can use in order to make an SSH connection to another machine. Now, SSH uses public key encryption. Now, we're not going to go in great depth about public key encryption and what that means, but it uses it both to authenticate, in other words, to send the passwords, and then to transfer commands between systems. In public key encryption, the nice thing about it is that the secret key used to decrypt these things is never sent across the network. Here's a very brief look at how asymmetric or public key encryption works. By the way, they mean the same thing. Public key encryption and asymmetric encryption mean the same thing. So Alice here wants to send a message privately to Bob. Well, what she does is she takes Bob's public key, which he makes public. All she has to do is ask him for it, and he can send it to her. And Bob's public key and Bob's private key are what form what we call a key pair. That is to say, if I encrypt with his public key, he can decrypt with his private key, and vice versa. If you encrypt with his private key, it can be decrypted with his public key. So Alice sends Bob a document that has been encrypted with Bob's public key. Now, Bob can decrypt that with his private key. Now, as long as he keeps his private key private, nobody else can read that document. And you notice that Bob's private key has never been sent across the network. It's pretty clever.